Hi, my name is Rami Karuba, and that is Rami Baskara, and today we'll be talking about evaluating intelligence. He's intelligent, he's not intelligent. Those are quick ways of saying how someone's past behaviors will indicate the brilliance of his next behavior. So the psychological perspective of intelligence shows that Charles Spearman, who hypothesized two factors that influence intelligence, include general intelligence and specific intelligence. The G factor, which is general intelligence, is a broad spectrum of the S factor, which is specific intelligence, that shows intelligence over unrelated domains and will require some cognitive ability. And specific intelligence makes up G factor intelligence, and it's comprised of mechanical, spatial, numerical, and verbal.
So what is intelligence to high school students? So as a lot of you might have noticed, in the modern day school system, students tend to define themselves with numbers, such as their SAT score, their ACT score, and their GPA. So first it's important to understand what the SAT and ACT actually seek to measure. There are two types of tests, and these are achievement and aptitude. The SAT and ACT both fall under aptitude tests, which predict your level of performance in the future, presumptively based on correctly answered questions in a limited time frame.
So now that we have the basics down, we can talk about the actual components of a test. Reliability is the ability of a test to give consistent results. Now, when evaluating the SAT is relatively reliable because whether or not a student has had preparation, they get around the same score range. But on the other hand, the ACT, it's hard to look at reliability because of the smaller scaling score, which is out of 36.
So content validity is whether the test measures what it's actually supposed to measure. So the established goal of the SAT and ACT, again, is to predict a student's level of performance in their first year of college. The tests both ask questions of basic reading comprehension, writing skills, and basic algebra, and some pre-calc. So looking at these, one can determine that yes, these tests do measure what they're supposed to measure, because these are the concepts that a student must know cold before going into a college-level class.
While the content is valid, the predictive ability is not. The fact is, it is impossible to predict success in college curriculums when they differ to the extent that they do.
So now it's time to go through a couple stats that we collected through a survey. So we found that 72.9% of students who have taken the test have taken it 2 or more times.
And 79.5% of students are somewhat okay with their scores.
"95% of high school students had been stressed out or upset about their standardized test scores. This is the stunning majority of students.
So the questions that we're trying to answer are these tests accurate? Should they be relevant in college applications? And are they actual indicators of our intelligence? So I'll be talking about the ACT because I have experience with it. So what is wrong with the ACT? Well, first off, the ACT has a biased format in that it has very strictly timed passages and sections. And this strict time favors males because they're more likely to guess than females. And so basically just rewards guessing. The ACT also underestimates females because you can look at the correlation that there is no correlation between a female's GPA and their ACT score. And lastly, they have a biased language which favors native English speakers rather than foreign students. So is the ACT accurate? A test conducted by Chicago State University showed that the ACT only explained 3.6% of the cumulative differences, and it did not correlate with academic performance. And another test that was conducted out of Southeastern University showed that it underestimated people of color because it only explained 6.8% of African Americans, while it explained 28% of scores for Caucasians.
Okay, so now it's time to talk about the SAT. So again, what is actually wrong with the SAT? So as most of you probably know, they recently redesigned the SAT, but what happened is it still has the same essential content. If any of you have taken the SAT without the optional essay, you'll have noticed that they give you an experimental section after this test. But how do they determine what questions actually make it onto the test from this experimental section? A study conducted found that they used the performance of white males to determine what questions were actually valid. So another study conducted found that questions that black students tended to answer better and more correctly than white students never make it onto future tests, which shows that the SAT favors white males while it gives a disadvantage to females and people of color. Another correlation is with socioeconomic status. Higher family incomes tend to perform better on the SAT because they can afford better test preparation. So now, is the SAT accurate? So the Arjuna study found that there was a lack of actual predictive accuracy with the test, and this was proven by the Culpeper study. The Culpeper study compared scores for white and Latino students, and they found that there was a lack of predictive accuracy at 19% of colleges, which sounds like a minority, but this actually affects 65,000 people.
So the question is, should these tests be relevant in college applications? In the survey that we conducted, 90% of students said that it should still be relevant in college applications, and 10% said that it should be overlooked. So what is the best way to determine who's a worthy candidate of college? Well, careful analysis shows that the best predictor would be GPA, because if you look at SAT scores and ACT scores, there are too many factors that can influence test scores, and that can happen on the day of the test. And also GPAs do not correlate with test scores either.
So, as shown by the survey at the bottom of the screen, a lot of people's GPAs don't correlate with their test scores. And this is why people should not stress about poor test scores as much, because your GPA is definitely a better predictor of how much you'll achieve in college. So in the beginning of our presentation, we gave everybody a mint. So as you probably recall, in elementary school and middle school, teachers would give students mints before they took any standardized tests, like an SOL, and they'd hand out mints, but here's why. In 1997, the University of Cincinnati found that a whiff of peppermint helped subjects concentrate on the tasks that they were performing. And in a 2007 study, Wheeling Jesuit University found that students chewing peppermint gum were found to be more productive and had more memory power, which enabled them to perform better on their exams. So, to leave you with a final thought, why should we define ourselves by a number that can be swayed with something as small as a whiff of peppermint?
Thank you for listening to our presentation, and we hope that you do not define yourself by an SAT or an ACT score.